in the club.
In the club.
We're back, Josh and Jack. It's good to be back. Jack, we haven't talked in over a week in front of a microphone and with video in front of us. It's very, 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 very good to be back. How are you?
That's true. We've as frequently as we've been doing things, that's as long of a break as we've had from doing one of these.
Dude, I know.
Since I don't know when.
Yeah. Like in the summer, I know we took a couple of days off here and there, but given the amount of content that we have been doing this football season, it was weird. Like I feel like what the hell is going on with us right now?
It was probably when I was on vacation this summer.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the last time. So that was it was quite a while ago.
Yeah. So happy to be here. If you're joining us live, watching on YouTube, hanging out, it means you're a patron. We appreciate your patronage. If you are listening before a Friday morning, you are still a patron. If you're listening after the fact, we would love to have you at patreon.com/I80 Club. We're about to ramp up again and start doing at least 3 of these a week. Wednesday nights, Saturday mornings, Saturday nights, reacting to Nebraska football. But we also have a ton of other stuff going on. I guess, Jack, the promise of 3 a week is going to increase very, very soon because you will be doing a Friday Nebraska basketball show and you will be doing a post-game Nebraska basketball show for select games, but the number of games is not a small amount, at least through the end of the calendar year 2024.
No, we actually have a working schedule right now. I'll post that instead of reading it to you. I'll post that in the in the Discord, and for those of you who aren't members, we'll have that out on social media here through the I80 Club Twitter sometime in the next few days. Just you can give me your calendar. And I haven't yet put out, Josh, I should make sure we have all our T's crossed and I's dotted on our Google Calendar that we've made that we're just going to make public. I just want to make sure it's all right before we make it public, but we're going to do that. We're going to make a Google Calendar for our members that if you use Google Calendar, we will just put all of our shows on there, make changes on there. And so you can add that. You can look at it if you want to. It's already made, but I just want to look at it one more time and make sure we don't have anything wrong on it. But I'll try and put that out maybe tomorrow if I can remember to do that. So that's another thing. And I just add to it the basketball shows that we're going to do, both the Nebraska Ball Brunch show and the post-game shows, which are called After Nebraska Ball. They will both be available to the public on YouTube. You don't have to be a member to see them, but I especially think this will be big for the post-game show. If you want to interact with us, the hosts, and you have thoughts after the games, you want to make comments and have Caleb and Bigelow and me respond to them after the games, that's only going to come from the Discord. That's something that is a privilege for our members. And I think that'll be something you might want to be able to do after those basketball games is get your thoughts heard. The YouTube chat goes on, but we reserve that part just for the Patreons who have been supporting us. And we do appreciate it because of the support of the patrons, we've been able to add all of the stuff that you just listed. We wouldn't have been able to do that. And so big thank you for the people who have joined new, who have stuck with us. We've had a few really great new members into the Discord over the last couple of months, really since the very beginning of the football season, who have become awesome. Just thinking of a few of them here off the top of my head, but they've been doing a great job. And the community's a whole lot of fun. It's as fun as it's ever been. So please, if you've been listening to us on the YouTube, on the podcast, and you want to support us more, that's a great way to do it. And then maybe add a little bit more in terms of what you can get. That's a great way to do it too. We really appreciate it because it allows us to keep doing this and hopefully keep expanding it. So big thanks.
Yeah, that is the goal moving forward. And a couple more things before we get going. Like and subscribe to the YouTube. We always appreciate that. It does help spread the word and grow. You know, when we start showing up as things on the side during other videos, that's always going to be good. A couple of guests coming up next week. Doug Maurice is going to join us. So excited for that one. He'll be on next Tuesday. That'll be live 7 o'clock on Tuesday night. So we will have back-to-back nights next week with live pods next Tuesday at 7, and then obviously the Wednesday night pod at 8 o'clock. Dirk Chatlin is going to join us 2 weeks after next, but in between that, Ken Pavelka will be joining Jack as well. We are still locking down exactly what time that will go live on YouTube. So stay tuned for all of that. But at the very least, the next 3 weeks, we think we have some killer guests that we are super excited for. So very much spread the word. We think that we're doing some cool stuff. And I appreciate everyone who checked out the Dirt Johnson pod that we did last week. Funny. Great conversation with Dirt. His internet was a little spotty here and there, but we had a great time talking about the Ducks and Buckeyes.
That happens with people.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty wild. Mickey says off-season pod. Jack and Josh say one nice thing about each member.
I actually one time thought about doing an end of the year awards for the Discord members.
Oh, wow.
We still maybe should do that at some point.
Okay.
You know, I could think I know most that's the thing about the Discord is I would say of the regular contributors, I bet I can think of probably 40 people in there that I know well enough that I could come up with something unique that they bring to the table or they're good at or they have good insight at or they're funny at. Like that's what the community has become. So ID Club superlatives. Yes.
That'd be like a 4-hour pod. That'd be like a 4-hour pod.
Yes.
Keen, I hope I get whitest sneakers.
I already know what Keena's is, so that one's like the one that's locked in already. So
bushiest beaver. Congrats to our inevitable bushiest beaver in the. Do you not know The Office?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I've seen that. I haven't seen it for a long time.
Sad.
So the timing of which you said that was just.
Yeah, that was not about Keena. That was about anybody else. But
yes.
Wow, I figured that would have been a funny joke.
It was, not. I'm sure, to some people.
Very, very sad. Very, very sad. All right, Jack, let's dive into it. Nebraska has not played in, 11 days? 10
like
days?
A month.
I know.
It's been a long time.
It does feel like a very long time since they played. This week, I don't know what it's been like. I mean, obviously I know that our shows are very, very different on the radio. I feel like John and I have been battling it out with people, trying to tell everyone that Indiana is good. And so we've just been getting yelled at for 3 days. Though for me, for 2 days, I wasn't back in Omaha yet on Monday. So I don't know what it's been like for you, but it's been an interesting one to say the least. As we get ready for the Indiana.
Really? So you've become the Cignetti defender. You became the Hoosier defender, have you?
Yes.
It's sad to see that. Really disappointing.
Look, I'm grinding, Jack. I'm over here grinding tape. I'm looking at the numbers, and I like what I see from the. I spent an hour watching Indiana highlights earlier today.
I got some takes on the roster that we can get into tonight. I mean, okay. I'm excited. Here's my thing, and I saw some. I've seen a little bit of that interaction that you've had on Twitter on that subject. I want to add a little nuance to what my thought about Indiana is, okay?
Okay.
Maybe a little bit nuanced than your simpleton listeners, okay?
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Some of those listeners are subscribers to the I-80 Club.
4 hours in the afternoon of sports talk. I'm going to add a little bit of, a little bit of nuance and complexity. My thing with Indiana is not, I see the IU on the helmet. That team always sucked. That team always sucks, okay? That's not what it is. But there's just no way that what is happening right now with that team and the situation that they're in with a new coach and an entire team basically having transferred in, some of which were good, a couple of which were very good at their previous stop, a big chunk of which were average at their previous stop. This just is not sustainable unless there is some kind of magic happening there. That's my point. Okay. And I don't know. I'm not even saying
it's the magic, good coaching and good players. Is that magic or is it just
is it good players? There's a couple of good players.
Interesting.
There's a couple of proven good players before this year. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe freaking Cignetti's Vince Lombardi, Josh. Maybe that's what the answer is.
Or he's just good. Why does it always have to go from like they're either horrible or he's the GOAT?
Josh, because it's like unprecedented if he keeps this going and does what he looks like he's on track to do right now. And this isn't even me saying Nebraska's going to beat them for sure, but at some point this fairy tale is ending. And I would love for it to be Saturday. It may be later. It's gonna happen. Okay, it's gonna happen. So,
what do you think? What do you think? Fairy tale ending looks like for Indiana in 2024. Like, what is that? Are you saying like three? Are you saying like 3 losses or more?
Well, I mean, a fairy tale is probably just 1 loss.
No way.
Well, have you looked at their schedule?
No way. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like, I thought you were saying if they lose to Ohio State, the fairy tale is over.
Oh no, the fairy tale. I think they're going to lose. I would say they're going to lose several games at the end.
That's what I'm wanting to. I wanted to.
Well, let me look.
You're going to be. Hey, wait till you start looking at their schedule, man.
I know. I've seen it. I was the one who brought it up first.
You were, of all the people in the world.
I brought it up first in this conversation. So like out of Washington, I'm going to throw Nebraska off the table because I don't want people to
that's fine.
Jack,
That's
you're
fine.
being biased. All right. Whatever happens there.
Okay.
Of Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, and Purdue, they will lose 2 of those.
So you're basically saying that they are at the very least,
and they'll lose Ohio State.
And
so best case scenario is they beat Nebraska and they still have 3 losses, which is a great. Don't get me wrong, that's a great season. But like this can't keep going. This cannot keep going unless there is secret. Otherwise, we ought to study this team, Josh. We ought to send them into a lab, right? We ought to whatever Signetti's doing, whatever's happening there. We need to get down. We need to extract the DNA from this team and put it in all teams in the future.
Yeah,
because it doesn't. Oh, here we go, D'Lo. Not tonight.
I love it. We're back, baby. This is like the olden days. Jack is ready to go, saying that other teams are average as hell, and now it's time to argue.
D'Lo, tell me you haven't looked at Indiana's roster without telling me.
Yeah, but Jack, hey, at a certain point, don't you have to watch the games? Like who cares?
Hold on. I just dropped it on him.
No, not really. Shouldn't you watch the games rather than looking everything on paper?
Wow.
Seriously, you're gonna do the thing.
Ooh.
Indiana's gonna beat Nebraska,
I just
and then you're gonna be like,
yeah,
but I still think they're average. Like you do this after it's the weirdest coping mechanism of all time.
I at least have. Maybe it's based on vibes or has been on the past. It's just not now. It's not now. He has done magic with this roster. He's done magic with the roster. He absolutely has. I'm not denying any of it.
We had and D'Lo gave me shit about this on Twitter yesterday. We had
really
Kelly. No, you didn't let me finish what I was going to say. About I see what you're saying. We had Kelly Ford on the Grum today. KFordRatings.com, our new one of our great new friends of on Sportspoint Conduct. He told us that he has improved Indiana by 14 points in his power rankings, which is like not heard of in terms of where they were before the year and where they are now. In terms of, you're giving me a look. What's that look? What kind of look?
I'm not. No, it's not about what you're saying.
Okay, yeah. So
That sounds right, Josh. I think that goes to my point. Like they're outperforming expectations of what they had coming into the season for certain.
Yeah. For
certain. And by the way, let's not act like I'm taking a huge deuce on Indiana by saying, yeah, they're probably ended up going, 9-3 probably. I mean, calm down. They're going to go 9-3. It's an incredible season. Tell me you've not watched Indiana. All right, let's see Indiana. You call me when Indiana is in the second round of the playoffs, and then you can accuse me of not watching Indiana this year.
Whoa. No one said they're going to be in the second round of the playoffs. Just the first round.
I said they're going to be 8-3.
The first
I said they're probably going to be 8-3.
9-3.
I just said
there are 12 games in college football now.
9. No, it'll get canceled because of no, I don't know. 9,
is COVID coming back? By the way, to quote K Ford one more time, in their final 6 games, 72% chance to win this weekend, 75 over Michigan or Washington, 82 over Michigan State, 67 over Michigan, only a 9% chance to beat Ohio State, 95% chance to beat Purdue. He has them with a 72% chance of going 10-2. That is the most likely record that he has them having.
And that I don't think that'll happen.
That would be a fairy tale, right? That'd be a fairy tale.
100%.
They'd be a playoff contender.
Josh, 9-3 is a fairy tale. 8-4 is a fairy tale. Yeah. I mean, all of it is. To be able to do what he's done, just whether, and I have watched them, although I wouldn't say I watched a lot of the second half of that Northwestern game. I've seen them. I've looked at the numbers.
You've seen them and heard about them.
Seeing that, I've heard they do some great things.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing. Like, what if he goes from a 3-loss team, right? If he goes from a 3-win team last year under Tom Allen, not the basketball player, but the coach of Indiana, to let's say 9-3. Okay. Let's say he goes from the 3-loss team or 3-win team to 9-3. Do you know how many Power 5 coaches have done that? Something where they've gone from 3 or fewer wins to, let's say, 8 or more wins.
I think Gene Chizik or Gus Malzahn did it weirdly.
Gus Malzahn, 2013. You got one of them.
Yeah, he took him to the national championship game coming off of a 3-loss season.
Now, that might have been a little bit of a different situation with the players that hung around from the previous administration.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that team exactly.
Yeah, that was a good team, man. They were fun.
They had some guys. They had another one. Mike Elko actually did it, even more recent than that. He did it with Duke. Yeah, he did it. Duke. They went, I believe, 3 wins to 9 wins there. Scott Satterfield did it for Louisville. Everyone with the last name Satterfield makes excellent decisions. So he did it with Louisville in 2019. And then the other one, going back just to the aughts, the 2000s, the other one is Houston Nutt at Ole Miss. He did it too. So
okay. Interesting.
That was in 2008. He got 9 wins after they had either 2 or 3 wins the year prior.
Alex says this would be like if Nebraska basketball started 15-0. Yeah. Mickey says, talk about edging.
So this doesn't, I mean, it doesn't never happen, but it happens once or twice a decade, basically, is how often.
Maybe this is that time.
You have this kind of a turnaround with a new coach in Power 5. And maybe it is. But my theory is the difference in this situation is Indiana's roster is not as good as any of the rosters that I mentioned in those situations.
I can't speak to all of them, but I mean, it's definitely not as good as
I guess I'm not going to claim to know exactly who is on the Houston Nuts Ole Miss team. Was that like Devin McCluster or something? I'm trying to remember who was on that team, but I don't know exactly who it was. I would just guess now that I've dug pretty deep into Indiana's roster and taken a look who's on that roster, and that's where I think the law of averages is going to kick in for this team. Now, again, this is not a theory. This is not, it's Indiana. Indiana always sucks. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the level of that kind of a turnaround, the pace they are on right now would be nearly unprecedented for him to be able to keep with this roster. And that's why I think when the competition level goes up a little bit, you're going to start to see them regress to the mean. Well, that's it. And if I'm wrong, I will laud Sig as one of the best coaching hires in the last 25 years. And it may still be that way. But
yeah.
Okay, offensively, they're very talented. Rourke is good. Surratt is good, at least in terms of what they had shown.
And the scheme is good. And the
scheme
is
Cignetti
good.
And Cignetti's scheme is good.
Yeah.
But they don't have, there aren't guys, the Jimmies and the Joes. I'm not sure if you've heard about whether the X's and the O's or the Jimmies and the Joes matter, but he just doesn't have guys that came in that had huge success, even at James Madison in the past.
Yeah, but like to be fair, like you mentioned, like Auburn, like let's keep going back to Auburn. Auburn had to play an SEC schedule. They are not playing an equivalent, like they are, in a way, their talent level being worse than Auburn's is matched by the schedule also being worse than Auburn's, you know?
Fair.
And they're already 6-0, so they already have so many games in hand that Auburn did not. Auburn had one loss early. I don't remember when it was, but
even what they've done now, even against weak schedule, the way that they've consistently blown the hell out of teams, it is in itself, to me, incredibly impressive.
That is the part that like I keep coming back to, because one of the discussions that we have had, you and I, a lot of us in the club, and just everybody within the fan base, going back to the last month and a half now surrounding Nebraska football. They have one fewer win, so they are essentially right there, right, step for step there with Indiana. They are just not doing it in an appealing way. A lot of the stuff has been about the schedule. So I went and looked at SP Plus today in terms of, let's look at the rankings of Nebraska's teams so far in the Big Ten, and let's look at the rankings of Indiana's teams so far in the Big Ten. And it is pretty much lockstep in terms of what we are talking about in strength of schedule. The difference is that Indiana is winning 41-21, and Nebraska is winning. It's like 22-13.
Totally agree.
So they are passing the eye test in a way that Nebraska so far, at least since the Illinois game, I just don't think has passed the eye test.
I don't think you've heard me say that their success.
No, I'm just speaking to this is about the grander discussion. Yeah. This is not about what you were saying.
I have been unbelievably impressed that they've won those games, because winning those games close is one thing, but consistently pounding those teams.
Yeah.
Even if they are Nebraska hasn't done that,
No.
Right?
Well,
there are plenty of teams that haven't done that against bad teams.
And D'Lo just mentioned something, and I'm going to post it. It's a large screenshot, but it's from my a Word doc that I was working on earlier. I'll post this in the chat too. I went and added up the amount of time in which they trailed, in which they were tied, in which they had the lead this year. They have not trailed for a single second this year. And overall, they have only spent 71 minutes out of a possible 360 tied. And like 12 to 15 of those minutes, Jack, are when the game is 0-0 before Indiana got the first touchdown. Like, this is a team, and that is, you want to talk about something that I am super curious about. What happens if Indiana trails? They have not trailed this year. Nebraska, Jack, they have trailed, but the largest deficit that they have had this year is 7 points. So it's not even like Nebraska. Neither team has trailed by more than 7 points, and all of those came for Nebraska. What happens if one of the teams is up 14-10, or rather 14-0, or 14-3, or 10-0? You know, what happens in the game 17-3 if one of the teams falls behind? I mean, I think Nebraska certainly has an opportunity to go in and like shut everybody up because it should be a really great crowd, a really great atmosphere. On the other hand, like against this offense, man, you do not want to get behind because they're gas. They are total gas. And like every time that Northwestern and Maryland tried to make it interesting, and they did. They did a solid job, I think, of showing fight. Indiana never seemed bothered by it. Like a comment from Alex, Rutgers trailed and panicked. They did. I don't think that Indiana, well, certainly when they're tied, they do not panic. We'll see what happens if they trail, but I came away from watching them today really, really impressed.
Like, and if you really want to get more nuance, and I think you were talking about the K Forward ratings, the SP plus ratings on defense. Like, I'm more impressed, honestly, with what their defense has done than what their offense has done between the opponents that they've faced and between the personnel that they've gotten. Because I think Rourke was one of the most underrated transfers in this whole class.
He's been awesome.
But it's not like people didn't know that. People were high on him last year till he got injured. 2 years ago, I believe he was the MAC Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year. Like, he had his numbers at Ohio were, I mean, basically what they are now. They were no different at Ohio. 69% completion. Nice. He threw for 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Like, he's on track for basically that this year. Almost exactly that this year. Like, Rourke that's the one guy who he is what I expected. And that was a great get from the portal. He was underrated. If you go look at the 24/7 ratings in the portal at quarterbacks, he's down there at like 28. And if you go look at the quarterbacks ahead of him, you will cackle at the transfer portal quarterbacks that were ahead of him.
He's first team all conference right now, above everybody, above Dylan Gabriel, above Drew
probably.
Like, he is like, easily through the midway point of the season the first team Big Ten quarterback.
That's one thing. Like, that is when I'm talking about talent overall, I'm not including him because he's doing what I thought he would. That was a great get, and he is what is the biggest, the reason that offense is working like it is for sure. And I think the defenses, the teams that they went against on balance are probably even worse at defense than they are at offense. Although I guess you could go individually. Northwestern's probably a better defensive team, but nonetheless, but it's the rest of that offense that's incredible. Like, they're running it. This is the thing I can't believe that. Right. They've got these guys, and they're both James Madison transfers. Right. They got the first guy as a Wake transfer. Would have been a teammate of Banks, Mr. Banks there.
Mr. Banks.
Justin Ellison. He's a Wake transfer. Like, he's got 409 yards rushing this year, 6.4 average. This dude, he's never had over a 4.9 average in his career at Wake. He's never had more than 650 yards in a season at Wake.
Hey, so let me say this: if you say that you are not someone who looks at their name and says "Durr, Indiana," you do seem to be looking at their players and saying, "Durr, they were bad before, or they weren't this good before this." So it seems like you're not.
That's a completely different thing, Josh. Looking at a logo as opposed to looking to player talent level past performance.
But they're doing it this year. They're doing it. Who cares about past performance if you're doing it?
All I'm saying is I don't know that they're going to be able to stay up to this level because the talent isn't there. That's it. That's a totally different thing than just stereotyping them.
I know it is, but I'm just saying, like, you keep bringing up like how good their talent was in years past, where it's like, yeah, but what they're doing now, like, I don't care about that. If you're performing at a high level,
I'll say it. If he is completely transformed, I don't know, 10 players from not even honorable mention all conference to all conference type players, then my hat is off. If he does that throughout the season, I was wrong. My hat is off. We'll see if he does.
Husker
No,
fans.
I think I think it's just the reality of what that roster is and how they've done it. It's been incredibly impressive.
Yeah. Husker from you. Winner has to get to 30. Don't think we can get to 30. Mickey adds 24 against Illinois is the most the offense has scored against Power 4 teams. I am so interested to see what the offense can do because, and I've said this on my show a few times this week, so apologies for those who have heard this. But, Jack, coming out of the Illinois game, you and I did at the show that Saturday morning, and we said, my God, the offense is really going to have to carry the team this year. We were way wrong on the defense. Yep. Talk about an overreaction in the moment, right? Because the defense is still really, really good. But can the offense get back to that level? Like, the offense, we came out of the Illinois game saying the offense has the pieces. They just got to put it together a little bit more. We come out of the last 2 games now, and especially the Rutgers performance, and we say, oof, there's a lot of problems. The run game, I think, is even more problematic than we thought it was. And certainly we would agree that Dylan Raiola being, at his worst, I think that couldn't have come at a worse time for the discourse surrounding Nebraska football, too. I would have rather that happen in week 3 than happened in week 6, just because it kind of changes the way that we're viewing them. So, if the offense can get back on track, which I think is certainly doable because I don't think that the first 5 games were fool's gold, that would go a long way in changing this entire discussion.
Right. And people are bringing up, compare Nebraska's talent to it. And we can do that if we want to. But my bigger point is not that this means Nebraska is the better team and is going to win on Indiana. The Indiana thing isn't going to keep lasting forever. And this might be the week where they don't look like they did. I think there's a good chance at some point they're going to not look like they did during the beginning of the year. Now, of course, that's happened with Nebraska too, right?
Yep.
Where they looked gangbusters against Colorado. And then all of a sudden they didn't against Illinois, and nothing made sense. Correct. With the way they played on defense in particular, like you were just referring to.
Dude, it's so cool that so Indiana is about to play the best defense that they have played this year, and it's not even close. On the other hand, Nebraska is about to play the best offense that they have played this year, and it's really not even close. Yeah. That's pretty damn cool that we're going to get to see this good on good. And that Nebraska's strength is Indiana's strength, I think that's awesome.
I've been telling you that I've had a little bit of trouble post-Colorado getting hyped for games, but for the reasons you just said,
I can tell you're ready to go, man.
I am so excited to see, especially that matchup of Nebraska's defense against this Indiana offense.
Yeah,
especially that. Now that I've gotten my confidence back in the defensive line, in particular, I cannot wait to see how that goes. And, we'll and now that we've had this discussion, I'm looking forward to it even more because I'm going to have a lot of egg on my face if Indiana's talent looks way superior to Nebraska's. Or now coaching, I don't know. Maybe that wasn't the statement I was making in that situation. But it's going to be fun. It is. I'm super excited for this game. And I really don't know what I don't even know. I've got until Friday till I make my official radio prediction. And I don't I'm mostly battling with what the consensus I know seems to be that it's going to be some kind of a shootout. I don't know if I buy that yet. I really don't know if I buy that yet. That's the hardest thing for me to figure out right now with this game is it going to be one where you've got to score, what did somebody say 28 to win?
Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that or not for either side.
Yeah. That'd be interesting if the game turned into a defensive game versus an offensive game. Because you're right. I think the majority of the discussion is this game is going to be high scoring. I don't really hear a whole lot of it's going to be 21 to 17. I
wouldn't be totally shocked by that.
Yeah, that Indiana's offense gets put in a locker.
Yeah, and Nebraska's does too.
Yeah, and Nebraska's does too.
I mean, I don't think that would be. Yeah.
2 things. So
hold on real quick. Yeah. Why are all your positive boys that are calling in your radio show? Why are none of them in our Discord chat tonight?
I think they are. Aren't some of them in here? I feel like people are agreeing with you.
Okay.
I feel like people are.
No, it's not. I'm not even agreeing with me. It just feels like everybody feels like it was interesting because you said it was sort of a tone where the callers.
Yeah, John and I feel like John and I are on an island.
You're like bringing them all down. It definitely doesn't feel. I'm not saying there's nobody, but that is not the vibe that I'm getting from the chat tonight.
So 2 things. D'Lo says this is a next step opportunity for Rule. I think that's totally right. I would also say this, Jack. This is a game for your 5-star quarterback to play like a 5-star quarterback. Yeah. This is an opportunity. And Alex says no 40-mile-per-hour winds to throw in this week. Dude, this is This is an opportunity. I mean, we can do the rule rank stuff to death, and we probably will, right? This is a great chance for Dylan Raiola. I think coming out of those first 4 games and even the Purdue game, it was like, thank God for Dylan Raiola. Then he has his worst performance yet, and I do wonder if we are way overlooking him in any of the discussion. When I talk about this game, I've spent the majority of the time talking about Nebraska's defense versus Indiana's offense, and I wonder if we should be talking more about Dylan Raiola versus the Indiana defense.
Isn't it funny how quickly the narrative can change? Because it wasn't that long ago, even after the Illinois game, people said, well, you got Dylan, so Dylan's going to keep you in every game, right? I mean, people, that was something a lot of people were saying after the Illinois game. That's long gone now, right? Nobody's saying that about this.
Not even a month ago. Not even a month ago.
Like, I haven't heard anybody say that. If they said anything, Nebraska's defense is going to keep them in the game.
Yeah.
Like, it is completely shifted on a dime based on 2 games.
Yeah, it has. And isn't it funny? Because the Purdue game, we would all agree that was like they moved the ball very, very well.
Yeah.
They just weren't finishing drives, and then special teams was god awful. Jason says Dylan showed up and outplayed Shedeur. Got to think he views it as a challenge against IU's all-conference so far quarterback. 100%. And like I know we hit on this a little bit last week, Jack, but this is a great spot for Nebraska where everyone's blowing smoke up Indiana's keister.
Oh, yeah.
Some of that coming from this side of the coverage. Some of it's going to obviously come from things nationally. And like, look, this is the first huge game like this for Indiana. They have been good this year. They have flown under the radar. They stopped kind of flying under the radar in recent weeks. They got into the top 25, and now this is their moment. Big noon, Gus and Joel, all that stuff. This is a huge game. Homecoming, and a helmet comes into town that people know. It is a program and a team that has fallen on hard times, but people know. This is a great chance for them. But, man, there's got to be some puckering, right? Like, I forgot to tease this earlier. I'm going to talk to Kyle Robbins tomorrow, who used to write for the Indiana SB Nation site, and that'll go live on YouTube at 11. I can't wait to talk to him to see, like, what is the vibe in Bloomington? Because from the outside, it seems like everyone's riding high. But are people worried that they could, like, shit the bed and, like, that this fairy tale, to go back to the beginning of the conversation, could come to an end? We've seen it around here a million times. The 400 sellout was ruined by Illinois. Who's to say that Nebraska can't ruin Big Noon coming into town for the first time, in a while?
We talked about it after the Rutgers game, Josh. I mean, it's as good of a mental motivational situation that Nebraska's had since Colorado. And I think that's been an issue this year.
100%.
100%. I really think it has. So I love it. I love the fact that they're underdogs. I think this, for better or worse, Josh, I think this team needs that a little bit. And they're not the only ones, right?
Yeah.
Take a look at Alabama. Take a look at Alabama. Take a look at Georgia, right? Yep. I mean, not comparing Nebraska to them in talent, but they didn't almost lose to Mississippi State or lose to Vanderbilt, right? Because they're, about even with them. They didn't give a shit going into those games.
Yeah.
They expected to walk over them, and that's a legit problem these days in college football. There is more parity, yes, but that's why those things happened.
Yeah, 100%. And so, dude, what you said, I think is, I'll probably never get a chance to talk to Matt Rule in front of a microphone, but one of the things that I would love to ask him would be like, do you worry that you put too much into the Colorado game to the point where it made everything else difficult? Because you and I have had that theory now for weeks, that they put everything into it. They got off to such a good start, and they have not been able to recapture that edge to them. And so maybe they're able to find it, and like, the off week couldn't have come at a better time. And then the first opponent after the off week couldn't have come at a better time because it forces you to raise that level of play again. But dude, they were so ready to go, and they just have not been able to match that energy. They were ready to go in the opener versus UTEP. They were ready to go against Colorado. And since then, it has seemed difficult for them to reach that performance. And maybe they peaked early. I don't think that that's the case. I think that this is still a good team and can be that team. They just gotta find themselves again. They just gotta fix a few things, and I think that it's there for them.
It's almost like a little bit the reverse of the USC situation under Bill Callahan. Remember, that was always the question: did they put too much emotionally into that game? And then when they lost it, it ruined the rest of the season. This one, they won it. but it's interesting. Andre says something that I this is another thing that why I'm a little bit bullish on the Nebraska defense. He says, I think another thing is our great defensive scheme will handle a less mobile quarterback better than that Illinois quarterback, assuming our DBs can hold up. Don't sleep on the fact how much Altmaier freaking killed the defense by keeping plays alive. And Hudson Card even did a little bit in that game, to be honest, for Purdue. I mean, he's probably an above average runner, Altmaier is, but it wasn't even that. It was just the fact that he could feel the pressure and he got out of it. Nebraska had almost sack after almost sack. Yep. And Rourke's not as mobile as Altmaier is. Rourke's got a couple, I think he's got a 10 or 12 yard run this year. But he moves
longest. Well in the pocket. I think he anticipates the pressure.
We'll see about that. Well. Yeah. Is he going to be able to do that like Altmaier did? That'll be the key.
Well, see, he has good receivers, and like that's going to help him, right? Like Altmaier, I think Indiana's skill guys are definitely better than Illinois' skill guys, and so he's going to be able to move, and he spreads the ball really, really well with that group of receivers, including one that has almost 600 yards so far on the year. 500.
Surratt, I think Surratt's by far their best receiver.
Yes, because how many yards does he have?
He's got 513 yards this year, 29 for 513, 2 touchdowns, 17.7. He is the his brother was a really good receiver at Wake Forest, if I recall. There's a lot of Wake Forest connections. Sage Surratt, I think he might be in the NFL now. Those years when Wake was putting up crap loads of points, Sage Surratt had huge numbers. But Elijah went to JMU, transferred in. He's another one of the guys on this team, I would say, along with Rourke. That is even at JMU, like he was first team all Sun Belt. Okay, so like he's at a level above the other receivers, in my opinion. The next one guy is Omar Cooper. He's a holdover from Indiana. He's got 375 yards. He's got 3 touchdowns. Kind of what he did last year at Indiana, maybe a little better. Miles Price is a transfer from Texas Tech. He's got 266 yards. And then another guy named Miles, who's an Ohio receiver. So he came over with Rourke. Yeah. And he's got 17 receptions for 208 and 2 touchdowns as well. Surratt's the best out of that group, even though the others, I think he's taking the pressure out of the others. And I think Rourke obviously has some connection with the Ohio guy. But
and Surratt, what's the other stat too? 23 rushing touchdowns, and obviously Nebraska's allowed 0. So like, talk about it again. Good on good. It's super fun.
The rushing, the rushing success is so interesting to me about Illinois. Like how there's got to be a lot of scheme that's really working.
Their blocking looks really good. Their scheme definitely is allowing them to pick up a lot of yards. And so you want to talk about an area where Nebraska coming to play some freaking grown man ball. That is where it has to show up. Their defensive line has to be peak Nebraska defensive line. They have to do what they've done, what they did versus Rutgers. After the first quarter, they completely shut down Monungai. He had 8 carries for 64 yards, and then after that, he was non-existent. They shut down the Colorado rushing game. It was the Northern Iowa game, and it was the Illinois game. Otherwise, the rushing defenses look great, and it's why Nebraska has a defense overall that is ranked where they rank.
And that O-line has obviously done its job for Indiana. It's a great question, though. How will they hold up against it? It's not like an extreme. There's one guy with tons of experience on the offensive line. I believe it's a right guard, Kadick. He's got 37 career starts. Otherwise, you got 2 first-year starters. You got that Wisconsin transfer at tackle who had a handful of starts there. And then Carter Smith, who started it at Indiana. That's the one place they didn't get transfers. It's interesting. He did not try to portal his offensive line from James Madison at all. He portaled 1 from Wisconsin, and the rest are all Indiana guys. 2 of them are first-year starters, which is kind of interesting too. So, that's what I want to see. How much of their run game, and maybe somebody who has watched them a ton more than I have in bits and pieces, but how has their run game been effective, right? Has it been, have they really been just making holes up the middle? Do they have a bunch of huge plays, but they got a bunch of touchdowns running, like you said, Josh. So it's not necessarily that's just like 2 big plays that are accounting for this. The other thing is they got a good tight end that they don't really use. He was one of the other first team all Sun Belt Conference players that came over from James Madison. God, can you imagine bringing over all of these players?
That's the wild part. Is somebody said earlier that this is what Colorado wanted to be, and it's very interesting that they were able to portal and they have kept it going. Now they did not have to play Oregon in Game 4 like Colorado did last year, right? Like their schedule has been. exactly what you would want. It's been exactly what you would want. And I am certainly not going to argue against that. Nebraska's played, if you go 1 through 12 of the opponents, Nebraska's easily played the top 2 teams because they played Colorado and they played Illinois. And Nebraska split those games. After that, the next 10, essentially it's like one team is ranked 79th and the other is 83rd. You know, they kind of go tit for tat. Nebraska's played in the 2 toughest teams. And, you know, how much does playing in close games matter? I never know. I mean, Nebraska always loses close games. So, like, I don't know how
they play in them.
Good thing
it's
that
not
they have
helped.
played in them. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But yeah, so.
It's got to be a weird dynamic when you come in at the beginning of a year and you're bringing in, you know, out of the 22, let's say there's, 25 regular contributors, like 15 of them are from James Madison or 13 of them are from James Madison. Then you got a few holdovers, but these 15 of them have been coached by this guy already. They know how everything works with him. You got the Indiana holdovers who've been coached by Tom Allen. And then you got a few other transfers from Ohio and from, Old Dominion and from other places. That makes, to me, what Cignetti is doing. I don't know. Do you think that makes it easier or harder to start a program quickly with a whole bunch of guys? I suppose in theory it's easier just because you don't have to start new. But I also think there's some dynamics on the team that would make that difficult. And like you were saying, Colorado, right? Now, the other difference with that is Jackson State is not at the level that James Madison was last year.
Yes.
Right?
That is a really sneaky part in all this is that Jackson State was good. I would say this, Jack, like, I think it can obviously be a positive. We're seeing it as a positive for them right now. On the other hand, I mean, there's a real world where he brings in all these guys and some of them are average. And then people are like, what the hell? You brought in all these dudes and you want them to start and they're not very good. So, like, I definitely think that it could have worked poorly. I thought it would, but I also
the continuity has definitely worked for Cignetti. 100%.
Yeah, because I'm usually a believer in, like, man, that's a lot of guys just to bring in 1 year. But I probably have to reevaluate my priors moving forward in college football. Sometimes this is going to work and it's going to work to this level. Other times it's going to be hard. For Indiana so far, it has worked out swimmingly. And their schedule, like, I know their schedule's been easy, but it's not that much easier than Nebraska's. Again, the difference so far is that they have not played a team like Colorado or Illinois.
D'Lo's telling me James Madison went to, well, that was my point. I said it worked here because James Madison was such a good program last year compared to Jackson State. Jackson State is a much lower level program than James. The year before Deion came there, despite Travis Hunter and Shedeur being there, it's still a much lower level program in FCS than James Madison was in their first year of FBS. They had a great year last year. They competed right away. So
yeah, fascinating, man. It should be super fun. Hey, I know that I feel bad. We're 45 minutes now into the pod, and we had like a bunch of other stuff that we were going to get.
That's
to.
All right.
So we can get to Indiana more on Saturday, certainly.
Yeah,
but you tweeted. I want to read this tease. Hell of a tease earlier on Twitter. You said tonight I plan to have a conversation we haven't been able to have for some 20 years and may not have a chance for again this season. Jack, I cede the floor.
Okay. I can tell some people are going to have a hard time maybe putting aside their beliefs on what reality is, but we very possibly won't ever be able to do this again this year. We have not been able to do it for 20 years. What is it? It is looking at postseason possibilities for Nebraska. And yes, a lot has to happen.
For the record, I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at D'Lo's because you said you haven't been able to talk about this for 20 years. Jack, are you single again?
That was the last time I was
really exciting.
I was able to. It's a weird way to make the announcement, but at least I didn't have someone do it on the radio. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the scenario, which I will completely agree is a unlikely one. Okay, so we'll get that on the floor. But let's talk about it for fun because we may not be able to talk about it next week.
Okay, yeah.
Let's say Nebraska loses to Ohio State and wins the rest of their games.
So they go 10-2.
And if they would beat Indiana, that would feel a big step more possible.
No shit. Hey, real quick. If people don't have fun if they beat Indiana because they think that Indiana is less than good, and this is less about you, Jack. This is more about other people. I'm so tired of this place. Enjoy this damn win if they get it.
I will.
Win over a top 25 team on the frickin' road. They never do that anymore.
I am going to make my promise. I will not, no matter how ugly it is, how close it is, I will not come in Saturday night.
See, they're mid. No.
I'm not going to be mopey on Saturday night if that happens. Okay.
Okay.
Right hand raised.
You won't be Moby if Nebraska wins. Good. That make good to hear, Jake.
I know. I acknowledge my problem with that. I have acknowledged my problems with that. But let's go into a fun, potentially fictional, but still possible world where Nebraska ends up losing to Ohio State, has 2 losses, and is in contention for the playoff at some level. Some level,
we're
going into November.
Yeah.
And just, can you even imagine, Josh, that world?
No.
Like the level of interest. It takes me back to 1999 cheering against Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech,
every day.
Oh,
it takes that, or it takes me back to 2001 after the loss to Colorado and having like 6 games need to go the right way.
Almost everyone went the way that we wanted to. The only one that did was Miami still beat Virginia Tech, but it didn't.
And they almost didn't. Yes. Yeah. So and it's going to be like that, Josh, every week. Every week. So like if you would get into, let's say you got through and you beat USC, right? Okay, you win out, you beat this, you win Indiana this week. You lose to Ohio State, but maybe look okay doing it. However, whatever that means.
Yes, and real quick, that would probably have to be a large part in this. Is that Nebraska loses like 35-24 versus Ohio State?
Okay, whatever it is. You beat UCLA, and then you go and you upset USC. That's when it really starts. Okay, that's when things get real.
What are you after that? You would be, if you beat USC, is that 8-2? Well, right? Yeah, because that's
Indiana,
the 10th game.
UCLA, that's 3 more wins.
Yeah. So you'd be 8-2 at this point in time with Wisconsin coming into town.
And Wisconsin and Iowa left your 2 biggest rivals.
Oh boy,
arguably at that point. And each of those weeks, there are going to be multiple games that could make it more or less likely.
Carnage all over the place in college football.
All over the amount, the who you're rooting for situation would be like a Saturday in February for college basketball. It would be so crazy. And
every week.
So I'm just trying to think of just for fun for the period. And I'm going to post this link because it's so good. And I'm
this
sure
the thing where you can like do that, where you pick who wins and loses games?
No, I haven't done that. I would like to do that, but I'm going to post. Oh, I can't cut the K Ford. Will you on there? I can't go between computers.
What do you want? What do you need?
kfordsrating.com/CFP. Okay. kfordratings.com/CFP. Or you guys can all just go.
You just want me to post that in here?
Yeah, we just post that link in the Discord.
Yeah.
There you go. So this is what I'm looking at. Okay. So look at this first one. And if you don't have it in front of you, K Ford, which Josh, I know you and John like a lot, right?
K Ford?
The K Ford stuff.
Dude, he's friggin' awesome. Yeah, K Ford rules.
So he has a chart that says how many wins would be required to be in the discussion. And he's got Nebraska solidly in the 10s. Okay.
Yeah.
So my scenario would be 10-2.
Yeah.
So they would be in that group if that actually happened. There are some teams that would have to have 11 wins to be in that. Like he says, Notre Dame would have to have 11 to be in that.
Yeah, and that's because of who they lost to.
Right, because of who they lost to. But in the scenario there, right? So Nebraska would need going forward 5 wins. That's the next chart at that one. And then if you go to the third chart, it's mulligans afforded and upsets required. So Nebraska would have to pull 3 upsets according to K Ford's.
And that's partly, I believe, because of the math right now.
Indiana, USC, and USC and
Nebraska's Iowa. Well, you ready for this, Jack? According to K Ford, Nebraska now has a sub 50% chance to beat everyone on their schedule except for UCLA, because Wisconsin now looks to be tougher according to all the numbers.
So let me ask you that. So let's say you're in that situation. What do you need? What are we cheering for in the Big Ten in that scenario?
Well, I would say you don't want them to make the conference championship, oddly. Right?
Yeah,
you don't want them. You don't want them in the conference championship.
I don't even know if that would be how possible that would be, because I assume Ohio State and Oregon would both have it on them.
Well, Ohio State in terms of Ohio State's schedule, they still have Penn State coming up. Obviously, they have Michigan, and I know Michigan's not what they were last year.
So I guess they could have.
Hey, don't laugh, but they have Indiana.
They have Indiana. Maybe Indiana. Maybe I'll be wrong about Indiana, and it'll help me in the end.
That said, they do, according to K4, they have a 50% chance to win the rest of their games. 93% chance to go 10-2.
But so I agree with you, Josh. You don't want them in that game.
You don't want the conference championship game. You don't want a third loss because
I agree.
It would knock you out.
The other thing I think you kind of need You need either Penn State or Ohio State, though. You need Penn State or Ohio State versus Oregon in the championship, and you need the other one to fall apart to get 3 losses, probably.
Yeah, what you would probably need in terms of playoff conversation, you would probably need Penn State, because they have Wisconsin, Ohio State, Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland. Jesus Christ, their schedule is cake.
Yeah,
man, because I was trying to figure out, would it be better if Ohio State, because Nebraska plays Ohio State, right? So I was trying to figure out, is it better if Ohio State like wins out and wins the league, and then Penn State has like 3 losses? You know?
Yeah.
That would probably be what you need, but that seems really difficult.
Penn State would have to have but you needed USC to beat Penn State actually last week is what you really needed.
Yes, that would have been massive in terms of getting into the playoff.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing you're doing is you're cheering for Colorado all the time, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the loss last week to Kansas State's kind of brutal for that.
Yeah, you're cheering for Colorado all the time. And then the Big 12, one of the most interesting situations to me in the entire playoff thing, whether we're including this scenario with Nebraska or not, is the Big 12 situation. And are they for sure a one bid league? Because that would impact this as well. Is it just the conference champion, or is there a 2-loss big team? Like a 2-loss, let's say Kansas State, that they only have 1 loss right now, right? Oh no,
K-State. Yeah, they only lost to Arizona or BYU.
Like the loser of the Big 12 championship, would they be in before Nebraska in that scenario?
Who?
Let's say could be BYU, Iowa State, or Kansas State.
Well, I think there's a really interesting question to be asked there of what the committee is going to do with a conference championship game loser.
I know.
That
Nobody
have
wants
like the same amount of losses. Yeah.
I mean, it's great. You don't want to go as a big underdog to the conference championship game, right? If that's because it's going to hurt your at-large bid more than anything.
Well,
of course, the upside is you win, you get in.
And you get a top 4 seed. I mean, one of the things that you would be rooting for, I can't tell, by the way, if people are enjoying this discussion or not, because Dila says this is like the SNL skit where Tom Brokaw is going on vacation and had to pre-record possible news stories. Gerald Ford was eaten by wolves.
Yeah, Gerald
Ford died today.
It was delicious.
Yeah.
Breaking news from Yorba Linda.
I
figured people wouldn't like it, but I think
it's fun. This is fun. Hey, wish casting is fun. You would need the ACC to become a 1-bid league, and you know what? That could happen because Miami is living on borrowed time right now. Miami is very much living on borrowed time. You need to root against Notre Dame. You need to root against
Notre Dame. Yes.
Root against Notre Dame. Root against the ACC. The issue with Nebraska moving forward, Jack, is like you would need to beat Indiana and then Indiana win most of their games, if not all of their games outside of Ohio State, because you need. Nebraska at the end of the year, they might not have any like ranked wins, so you need some of those teams to continue to win. And then how many SEC teams get in? Like, I don't think that the conference is anywhere near as good as people like thought it was a few weeks ago. You know, SEC seems like it's Texas and everybody else. Even though I do think they're going to lose this week to Georgia.
I mean, you probably need Ole Miss or Tennessee or Alabama to completely bite it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, dude, they're playing each other this weekend. So one of those teams is leaving Saturday.
One of them will have 2 losses. Isn't
By
that
the end
crazy?
of Saturday, one of them is going to have. And hey, there's a real world, Jack, where Georgia leaves Saturday with 2 losses as well. And suddenly it's like you have either Bama, Tennessee, or Georgia with 2 losses. Ole Miss already has 2 losses. And Missouri, they suck. They're going to have 2 losses at some point in time, too.
The Big 12 is going to be wild. Like, I am fully. It might be different in further years because I'll have a better idea of how it works. But I am officially super intrigued what's going to happen with the SEC now that either Bama or Tennessee is going to have 2 losses. That you're right, that Georgia could have 2 losses. That all those teams already have 1, and Ole Miss, like, they're not all making it. I mean, they're not all making it, even though, I'm sure that the hope was that they wouldn't have those sorts of records. And then you'll have an SEC title game where somebody's going to lose 2, which I assume might just be Texas versus, might be a rematch of the game today on Saturday. Texas and Georgia.
Yeah.
But assuming Texas is taking that spot, basically going to wrap up that spot as well. That's it. And after that, after you go through those teams that we mentioned, there aren't a ton more teams that you need to worry about. I mean, then you're starting to get where Nebraska would be at that point. If they were winning.
Points out Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon likely still have a 10-2 Nebraska team. Yeah, you would really need one of them to totally shit the bed, which I think is.
Yeah, that's what I said. You would either need Penn State or Oregon to get 3 losses, or Penn State or Ohio State to get to 3 losses.
But or can the Big Ten be a 4-bid league? And of course it can. Like, that's a very real world. It's just one of the teams that Nebraska would beat, like, here's the thing. So let's say I'm almost trying to game out the best records that everybody could have if they suffered a loss to Nebraska, not counting Ohio State. I think for Indiana, it would be 10-2 because you lose to Nebraska, you lose to Ohio State, and you win out. But, dude, USC is already 3-3. So at the very least, USC can only be 8-4. You know, and Iowa. What is Iowa right now? They're 4-2, 5-2. So at the very worst, Iowa could be 9-3. Wisconsin 8-4.
In our head-to-head, Nebraska has except for Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon. Nebraska's got the head-to-head on all of those teams except Illinois. Right? Yeah. That could be in that group, and so that should take care of. That would take care of that for the most part because they're going to have the head-to-head. Plus, they have good losses, right? In that scenario. Hopefully, Colorado still continues to look good. Their resume isn't going to be the best of these groups that are on the bubble, but it's definitely not going to be. It's definitely not going to be the worst for sure. No. Iowa State's is not going to look as good. You know, there are going to be teams in that range that do not look as good as the resume Nebraska has if their losses are Colorado and Ohio State. Best win USC. You know, I guess, and that'll depend on what USC or maybe Iowa.
I mean, because I think Iowa could win out outside of Nebraska and be 9-3. Like, I think that's realistic with their schedule. That'd be a good win. If you go on the road, Black Friday. But at the very least, you don't want to make the conference championship game. Dude, I have found myself just thinking about that Saturday in December and how wild it's going to be when there are home games with the playoffs. And it's just, I can, like, December 21st is going to be stupid. Like, the amount of fun we are going to have watching college football that day, I think is going to be, it's going to be unlike anything we have ever done before.
So, like, I know everybody has different ones, but I like just looking at the brackets, because some of them, it's interesting, Josh, some of them are awesome, and some of them suck.
Yeah, some of them suck.
Because it's just rematches. Like, K-Forge right now has Tennessee and Ole Miss playing to face Texas. Are you kidding me? In the 8-9 game. And then they've got Georgia and Tulane playing, at Georgia, to play Iowa State. To play Iowa State in the second round. They've got Notre Dame at Alabama. Okay.
Helmet game.
With a winner of that to play Miami. Yes, please. That would be, I mean, there's a great story behind either of those maps. And then Penn State and Oregon with a winner to play Ohio State. Puke. Please don't get them lined up like
that. So first of all, real quick, Oregon and Penn State haven't played each other, so that's not a rematch. Also,
I know, but Ohio State, they're in the same, it's probably the same thing.
There's a part of me, there's a part of me that thinks there's going to be some chicanery going on and that the CFP committee is not going to seed conference teams against each other. I think they're going to do everything they can to avoid that.
I think so.
I think they're going to work, and it's going to be like, oh, interesting. Look at the college football playoff teams. They're not playing any of their brethren until the quarterfinals of the playoff or the semifinals of the playoff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you get something crazy like, well, first of all, I think even if Boise loses a game, I think they're still going to get in, especially if G&T's clearly going to win the Heisman.
Yeah, like, I'm surprised that Tulane.
Yeah, this had Tulane.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was a little surprised by that.
Also, like, I don't buy that many SEC teams making it anymore. I really
I don't either.
Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas, and Bama. No way.
See, and K4 does it based on his deserving rankings, which is not necessarily.
Okay, not the season.
That may not match. I wish there was I'm ready for the CFP poll to come out. Right, like
that's a couple weeks from now.
Still 2 more weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, I think it's the day before Halloween.
Isn't it funny, Josh? I used to think that was so stupid when that thing came out and they made a big deal of it. Like, I can't wait to see it. You know, Nebraska involved or not. I'm really excited to see that thing this year.
Yeah,
I am, at least right now. I reserve the right to change my mind about this, but I think the playoff is making the regular season even more fun than I thought it would. And I was an old stodgy dude, 15 years ago, where I was like, don't ever go to a playoff because it'll ruin. I love that somebody can lose and their season's over. I've come around. I've changed. My positions have evolved. I'm a flip-flopper. But so far, I think it's even more than I expected. Just sort of figuring out just talking through that scenario we just did. Like, if for Nebraska, there's so many moving parts on it. You got so many conferences where it's crazy. Like, and like BYU or Iowa State or somebody goofy. is going to be in the playoff too, and that's great, right? Like
it's awesome. I think it's super cool.
That's good. And Boise will probably get in, and you'll probably have Boise and have a
dude.
Heisman.
Hey, you know what? If you're we kept saying, man, the best seed might be a 5 seed because if you're a 5 seed, you get to host a 12, and if you win, then you're playing the 4, so you get to avoid like the top seed lines. This year, I don't know if that's the case if you have to play Boise State in their run game.
As it stands now on this one that on K-Fords, and he's got Georgia at 5. Can you imagine Boise going into Georgia with a winner playing Iowa State?
That would be wild. That would be wild. It's going to be awesome, man. Like that is I very much think that it's made the season better. And I will say this, like, one of the things that people bitched about was the idea that you can lose games and it's still okay. And like, while yes, that is true, seasons aren't lost anymore. Subconsciously, I think that this is affecting teams, and I don't think that it is as easy for players to get up week after week. It's never been easy, right? Like, it's why perfect seasons should be celebrated in college football, because finding that level of performance for 3 straight months is impossible. Now, in the back of your head, like I don't think Alabama went on the field versus Vandy like, sweet, we can lose this and we're okay. We got Georgia.
Right.
But it's built into everything now. And so one of my takes, Jack, coming out of that weekend 2 weeks ago was that this is now going to be the regularity. I think the sport is actually going to get crazier now in the regular season because, again, subconsciously, all these players, they're not thinking about it in the moment, but they know that they have mulligans. And so I think that is going to cause more upsets. And I think that's cool. I think it's really interesting.
Can you believe this sport landed ass backward with all their freaking problems, the lack of leadership, the Wild West and all these things, into a season where you and I are saying things like that? Like, this is freaking awesome. There are more upsets than I ever dreamed. Vanderbilt's beating Alabama. Georgia is almost losing to Ole Miss. Pick your other, tens of near upsets or crazy upsets. Northern Illinois is beating Notre Dame, that kind of thing. And like, all the discussion has been, it's going to be the haves and the have-nots, going forward. And then this season, that couldn't be further from the truth than it's been for the last decade, which is hilarious.
100%. It's awesome.
Which is hilarious.
It really is cool.
And then add in things like this, like D'Lo said, there's 40-some teams or whatever that are still a possibility for the playoff. That additional wins required chart that K-Ford had on that link, you can see them. But like, Notre Dame loses and they're probably out now, right?
Yep.
Utah, Louisville, these teams lose and they're probably out now. Iowa loses and they're probably out now. So that's the fun thing here about this. There's a ton. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see how it all works out. God, it would be fun if Nebraska could, even if you just beat Indiana, right? And then
you hang around an extra week.
Because then, you don't only hang around an extra week, you hang around another 3 weeks, probably.
Yeah, barring a collapse versus UCLA, it really does guarantee
and then
that Nebraska goes into their final off week with 3 games to go, and so it guarantees that in mid-November they're still in the conversation.
It sends you into if you beat Indiana.
Yeah, you're going into USC in the playoff.
You're going into USC with all of a sudden, holy shit.
Everything
you win this game, and things could start to get really weird.
Yeah, not to make everyone sad before we get going, but it really does make the Illinois loss like blow even more because you want to talk about an extra mulligan. If they're 6-0 right now, and we're like, because then we're not even. First of all, Jack, if they're 6-0, what are they? 15th in the cut. They're above Indiana right now. So we're talking about a couple of top 15, top 20 teams on Saturday, and then they have more mulligans to play with for being in that ranking. So it does. If you want this weird goofiness to play out, they got to win this Saturday or else.
Josh, imagine that. They could go in and lose. At least hypothetically, lose to Ohio State and USC, but win out the rest of those games and still at least be in the conversation.
In theory, it'd just be really, really difficult. At the very least, they'd show up on the Tuesday rankings.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they'll be in for sure. I just love the idea of getting into the second week of November and being like, okay, there are things to cheer for. There's a chance for this to happen if they can take care of business, which honestly, I never really thought. People said that might happen this year, and it still may not. They may lose Saturday. They might be over. I never really believed it would happen this year. So if it does, even if they beat Indiana and it goes for another 3 weeks and we're at least talking, we're having this I'm having this conversation now because we may never get to again, right? Yeah, if they lose to Indiana, they probably won't. So, but if we can have it again after Indiana, after Ohio State, after a win against UCLA, going into that USC game, that alone would just be a blast. So it makes the whole sport better and more exciting, right? Like those days you were sitting and watch the SEC championship, just hoping to high heaven that LSU would beat Tennessee. And
they did.
What do you know? They did. Thank you, Matt Flynn.
God, what a great day. What a great day. Oh, dude, this was a fun
That
pod.
was my topic.
That was a fun-ass pod.
Can't wait. Now I got myself more pumped up for the game. I really need Indiana to look bad now just so I don't get too much hell. Even though I didn't even say that would necessarily happen, but that would be great because I can be a jerk then, and I will.
Yeah, it'd be perfect. Oh, the pod Saturday night would be great. We have a lot coming up over the next few days.
Yes, not Flynn. Okay.
Kyle Robbins tomorrow joins me. That pod will go up at 11 o'clock on YouTube. Check it out. We'll talk about Coach Cigs and the Hoosiers and how he is feeling about Indiana going into this game.
Ask him how he freaking did it, will you?
Okay, perfect.
How is he doing this?
Let me write this question. I'm literally gonna write this question.
How's he freaking doing
How has Cigs done this? Okay, perfect. All right. How has Cigs freaking done this?
Yes,
okay, there we go.
All
right, perfect. I'll ask Kyle tomorrow. That will go up 11 a.m. Tomorrow on YouTube. Go check it out. Please like and subscribe. If you're listening to this in the future, as it went public on YouTube, we would love to have you. Patreon.com/ID Club, because coming up Saturday, this pod that we just recorded, obviously, eventually goes away from the paywall. Saturday morning, the best pregame show in college football is us.
Wow.
9:30 to 10:30. I'm saying it. We don't put headgear on, and we don't have a kid kick for $100,000. But we also are way more fun and way more entertaining.
But I do shotgun caffeine-free Coke Zero occasionally.
He does do that. We would love to have you. Patrons only on Saturday morning at 9:30, and then we'll be back on Saturday night.
What time? Saturday night.
Saturday at 8.
At 8. Okay.
At 8.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, back to our normal time. Hopefully.
Ooh, right in the middle of Texas, Georgia, too. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Baby.
So join us there. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We would love to see you on Saturday night. And again, moving forward, we have Doug Maurice. He's going to join us next Tuesday night. We have Dirk Chatlin. We have Kent Pavelka and more. We have a Nebraska basketball postgame show. We have a Nebraska basketball Friday brunch show. We have so many pods coming. And to keep the lights on, we would love to have you at patreon.com/I80 Club.
Yep. But for sure, make sure and subscribe to YouTube if you don't want to.
Do that. That's the easiest thing. You don't even have to pay for it. Yeah, just click the like button. All right. Jack, is that it? Are we done? You're doing the hearts. I guess we're done. All right. He's Jack.
It's 9:08.
Yep. We'll talk to you. I'm on Kyle Robbins tomorrow at 11 a.m. And then Jack and I back together on Saturday morning.
Later. Bye-bye.